cows the other day, and I was just listening. Well, this is something I wanted to bring up to you, Cliff, because I had literally never heard it before. It was like on the radio, on like the local country station. It was just, I guess it was sponsored by like Virginia horse racing, but it was like just an ad for the Virginia
Yep.
horse industry on like the like top 40 country station.
Yep. I'm
And
hearing it up here too.
yeah, and I had never heard anything like that before. Like it just starts out and it's like, do you understand like the impact horses have on Virginia's economy? Da da da. Da. And it's just going on. I'm like, this doesn't sound like, like I'm about to hear Luke Bryant after this radio ad.
Yeah, who did they play
Local
after that
community
ad?
radio.
Dude, I have no idea.
No, the Racing Commission, Thoroughbred, or the Racing Alliance, and maybe the Thoroughbred Association or the Thoroughbred Council. I'm not sure, but they're funding that ad, and it's just highlighting horses. I think it's great. They did a billboard a couple of years ago just to say how much money the horse industry makes in the state every year.
Yeah.
And they just had it on the side of the highway for 2 years. Like it's not advertising anything. It's not pushing people to a website. It wasn't asking for money. It was just like, hey, we're worth $2 billion.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah, well, that was my question was like, is there an ends to that ad, or did they just? And also, Virginia, you know more than I do. What is Virginia horse racing? Like, is that like, because I think steeplechasing, I don't like, do we have any like flat tracks in Virginia?
Yeah, we've got Colonial Downs outside of Richmond as our thoroughbred track. And it was real active for a long time. You'd have to Google what year it's opened, but the previous owner, got in a fight with the state where he wanted a highway exit. And he owned a bunch of property right there, and he wanted a separate exit off the highway just for the racetrack. And the state didn't want to pay for it. I can't remember exactly what it was. I don't want to be making stuff up, but he had some problems with the state. Thoroughbred racing in the state of Virginia was not doing real well anyway. And gambling laws nationally hadn't gotten to where they are now. And so he just shut the track down. It wasn't even like the horse racing wasn't bringing in people. He was just fighting with other people. And so the track sat closed for a long time. And then some investors came in, bought the track, bought the property, and then eventually Churchill Downs came in and bought it and reopened it. Got races running again, I want to say 3 years ago. And I went to the races with the governor this year.
Oh, nice.
And
I saw your
he
photo.
did the secretariat. The secretariat's anniversary was this year. And so the governor had a big day. And yeah, man, I know people now. So I got to go to the races, and they had a $1 million race. They had a couple of big time races this year. And I mean, for Virginia bred racing, that's a big deal because a lot of the thoroughbred industry left the state when the track closed down. If you don't have something local or something that you can race in on your own, there's warmer places to live and race horses than Central Virginia. So it was a big deal getting it back. And the track's great. I got to do a kind of behind the scenes tour and go up to the judges box and go behind all the announcers booths and everything. And, new equipment, new spaces, good food, good liquor, full casino floor on the bottom, all the slots and and game machines you can play. So it's a good time, and it's a legit deal. As far as, we don't have standardbred racing, I want to say there's only 9 or 10 days a year out at Shenandoah Fairgrounds has a track.
Oh, okay.
So they do some harness racing out there, but not a ton. And I feel like there used to be another harness track in Southside Virginia, but I can't remember. I don't know if that's still going on anymore. But yeah. So as far as like number of starts, there's probably as many steeplechase races as there are anything else in the state. But when you talk about racing, and especially if you see money getting thrown at advertising, that's coming from thoroughbred racing. That's coming from flat racing.
Okay.
Gold Cup's a fun time, but they're not generating the kind of dollars to warrant a statewide radio campaign.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I figured. So, and wow, that's crazy that one track can have that much impact.
Absolutely. One good track in a state or in a region will maintain an industry, well beyond its own means. Because the thing is, if you only have one track, especially in a big space, and we're not that far from Maryland racing, 95 and 81 make a lot of places really accessible, but having a home track, doesn't matter what part of the country you're in, but having a home track makes it much easier to justify breeding horses and training horses, even if you're not competitive enough to be taking horses to Florida or California or Kentucky or New York. I should include New York.
Gotcha.
And so it's, there's the business decision there, and there's some other stuff, but there's also a lot of history and a lot of tradition to thoroughbred racing in Virginia. And so keeping that, there's a lot of people that want to keep racing in Virginia just because their family's been in it for generations, or there's aspirations for it. And, we do have some pretty big time horses that came out of Virginia that kind of redefined the industry. And so, there's incentive for communities and the state itself to support promoting thoroughbred racing, Virginia thoroughbred racing. But yeah,
Cool.
the money that gets brought in from gambling on thoroughbred racing, part of that gets sent directly to the state specifically to promote thoroughbred racing. And so sometimes that's where you see that pipeline where they're trying to figure out the best way to spend that money according to their rules and regulations within that agency or board. And I don't know that was the case with the radio ad that you heard, but that was certainly part of the case for like the billboards in the past and some of the other things that have been done where they're just generically promoting the horse industry with no real goal other than just keeping people informed.
So, what are the gambling laws in the state of Virginia?
So Virginia's got, you can gamble on horses nationally with the sports betting changes. You can gamble on sporting events, non-collegiate sporting events in specific locations. I'd have to double check if the phone app laws have opened up in Virginia or not. I know there was conversations about it, but I don't know if they've gone into place yet to where you can bet on FanDuels or Sports Kings or something on your phone.
Yeah, you can now.
Yeah. So that's all opened up. We've got some casinos. The casino conversation is complicated. There were 5 casino districts that were approved a couple of years ago. 3 of those districts have built casinos. Richmond's got voted down by popular vote this year. And there's discussion about building one in Northern Virginia, I think Herndon. Those locations do have table games and all the other stuff. But we don't have video gambling is another aspect of it. You go out, when I was out west, every truck stop, every gas station, every divey little bar had a slot machine and a video poker machine. And it, Montana, that was the only reason I think a lot of those places could stay open, because the beer's a lot cheaper at the gas station and it's too long of a drive to get anywhere for real. So I think people were driving in to go use the video poker machines. We don't have that in Virginia. We do have historical horse racing, which is a randomized horse betting action through a kind of a slot machine looking type machine. But the gambling laws are opening up a lot. Year by year, we've kind of normalized gambling everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like the horse racing deal is just kind of a version of gambling, right? I mean, it's not that much different, right?
I'd say it's 100% gambling.
Yeah.
Like 100% is gambling. No argument about it.
The racing industry wants to protect their market share. And so you see states like Florida, they had a law that said that there was not a casino. There could not be a casino that opened in the state of Florida that did not have a horse track attached to it. And that was the same thing, Maryland, Virginia, for a while. And those laws started to get taken or rescinded. Those requirements were taken away because the casinos were like, look, we can't afford to subsidize this horse racing stuff for the sake of the casino. The horses aren't bringing enough money to pay for themselves. And the tracks had started taking away purses, cutting down races, canceling events, canceling support. And the horse racing industry was drying up because all of the money had to get funneled through the casino floor first. And so nationally, it used to be really contentious, to where the thoroughbred industry in particular was fighting tooth and nail to make it so that there could not be gambling anywhere that there wasn't also horse racing. And they kind of lost that fight. But whenever we see the laws go away, we immediately see tracks get shut down. Anywhere those rules change, racetracks get shut down because it's expensive to run these horse races. There's a lot of investment just to keep, the industry viable enough to keep enough horses around so that they can have the races, much less, paying people and hosting events and running publicity and doing all the other stuff you got to do just because it's another business.
So
yeah,
so that's interesting to me, because I feel like that is the paradox of when you talk about horse racing. Is like I feel like my entire life that's kind of been the narrative, where it's like, oh, horse racing, is it going to stick around? Like there are places where it's hard to sustain it. And then, like the last time we had you on, we talk about how that is the biggest driver of the American horse industry. And then you see, videos on Facebook of horses going for millions and millions of dollars. And then you watch it and it's like, well, okay. So on one end, it's like, oh, this is a tough deal. Is it going to keep going? The laws are not on our side. And then the other side of that coin is, but look how much money is attached to this. And like that every time I talk to anybody who makes a living in the horse industry, not in racing, they make the comment like, oh yeah, well, you can make some money here, make some money here. It's like, but of course, the horse racing, just sell a few thoroughbreds and then you'd be set, right? And so like, how does that work where it consistently has the biggest zeros on a check associated with it compared to any other sector of the industry, but at the same time, it's always discussed like what you just said, where it's expensive, it's hard to keep going, all that. Like,
Well,
how is that balance?
we've got the thoroughbred industry has more investment than any other aspect of the industry. There's more people just parking money in the thoroughbred industry than anywhere else. And so you have people that are in a position to lose money. You got people that are in a position to sit on money in a really different way than what you see in quarter horses or paint horses or something like that. And so when you have people that can invest money, that floats all ships, right? That high tide floats all ships. If somebody's putting $100,000 in a horse with the aspect of maybe it paying off after 5 years or 6 years, then the next guy that comes in is going to be expected to at least meet that same kind of price. It creates a market. If tomorrow somebody said every good working horse is worth $45,000, well, there's a lot more people doing, breaking working horses than there are thoroughbreds. There's a lot more working horses on the ground than there are thoroughbreds. You'd see a radical shift in what people thought was worth money or not worth money. Yeah. We kind of saw that. The show jumping world kind of saw that during the pandemic, where all of a sudden all these people had more free time. They were leaving their urban homes because they could work remotely. So they were going out into the country and they wanted to lean into the horse show stuff a little more seriously. And all of a sudden you saw every horse that could get over a 36-inch jump, they just added a zero to its price tag. Mm-hmm. You couldn't find horses. We had guys here in Central Virginia that were importing warm bloods from Canada every week by the trailer load, just to try to keep something in the sales barn so they could show people when they came by. They just didn't want empty stalls. Mm-hmm. And they were moving through them, man, every week. And so any aspect of the horse industry could become like that. It just takes a huge amount of interest and a huge influx of cash. The thoroughbred industry is the only one that's been able to consistently do that for generations, hundreds of years, because it has its own outlet built into the model. The racing part of it keeps it on the front of everybody's mind. It keeps it in front of everybody's eyes. It keeps introducing itself to new generations, and you don't have to. It's one of the only aspects of the horse industry where touching that horse or being near that horse is completely irrelevant to enjoying that horse's athleticism or ability or story. I mean, that's a big part of it nowadays, is just the story. Yeah. Trail riding doesn't do that. Nobody's flying to a race, paying for a new fancy wardrobe to watch a live stream of somebody walk up and down the mountain on their 27-year-old Appaloosa.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I mean, yeah, those people are horse lovers, but horse race fans they're like lovers of the thrill, and then you drop some money on that. You could be an inner city guy in, Toledo, Ohio, and you drop some money on a race and you're watching it and you're part of the thrill. Like you're bought in.
And most are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most bettors are not engaged in the horse industry in any way. You would call them fans, not lovers. They're not equestrians. They're not enthusiasts. They're bettors. They're horse racing fans. It's different than being horse fans. And so that longevity, is built into the business model, but it's also maintained. People are very price sensitive, and if you have spent $40,000 to play this game, you're damn well going to make sure that the next guy that comes in, it costs him 45, $50,000. It's got to be more expensive for the next guy, or what was the reason you got into it at all?
Yeah.
And unlike barrel racing or any of the rodeos, we could talk about bucking horses in the same kind of light. The horse racing, the thoroughbred horse racing community in particular, has got hundreds of years on everybody else as an organized sport. They've got hundreds of years of price sensitivity and an ingrained price memory to play off of. Well, there's still some royalty dude somewhere with his feelings hurt that his grandpa got in more expensive than his great grandpa. Yeah. So I think that's where that is persist. That is allowed to persist. And it's fun. That's the other part of it. Engagement goes down when it quits being fun, and thoroughbred racing has certainly had their own problems, but people that go to horse races have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before Ben logged on, you were asking us about our trip to Vegas and the NFR, and you just mentioned the bucking horses, and gosh, that was an awesome experience, and I know Ben and I both loved it. But if you're talking about that guy in Toledo, Ohio, you don't have to put that on TV and be like, well, let me explain this and do that. It's like every 4-year-old child can understand horse racing, right? Yeah. It's like that one's faster, and, there's a lot of horse events that kind of hit that primal itch, but gosh, nothing is more basic than that horse is faster than that horse. And so that horse wins. Yep. And that's, I feel like, a big advantage they have in their product too. And like you said, it's hundreds and hundreds of years, because I'm sure, I think Ben and I have had this conversation, probably not on the air, but like the first guy to ever throw a leg across a horse, he was probably a wild SOB, right? And as soon as there was a second guy wild enough to throw a leg across a horse, there was a horse race, I bet. Yeah. Like that, it's just the next progression, in your mind. It's like, well, I can ride one of these, and then he can ride one of these, and okay, well, let's see how
I can do it better.
Go. Yeah, exactly.
I can do it faster.
I can do it faster.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You guys have seen that movie, How to Train Your Dragon, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
That's horse people right there. Showing off, getting the better one, teaching your horse tricks.
Mine's prettier.
Racing.
I got the right colors.
Yeah. Mine's bigger. Mine's stronger. All that stuff. Watch me ride mine into battle. Yeah, all those basic things.
No, there's the difference. Anybody can watch. The Winter Olympics coming up. You got the difference between explaining the rules of figure skating to somebody versus just watching any of the ice racing. There's no commentary on an ice race. When those guys, it's a little tiny circle, what that Apollo guy used to do, goes as fast as possible around. Mm-hmm. Everybody's watching like a NASCAR race because you don't actually care. You just want to see somebody wipe out and take out everybody else with them. But if you tried to explain the rules to a figure skate, how the judging happens and everything else, and that's why they get so mad, and everybody's, Russians can't go home, or people have to defect afterwards and all this other stuff. You can't explain any of that stuff. It just happens, and then you have to live with the ramifications.
Hey guys, let's talk about steel buildings for a minute. Maybe you've looked into building one on your place. Maybe you saw the price tag and that scared you off. Maybe just the sheer amount of work and effort, planning, all that good stuff that goes into it has kept you from going ahead and building on your property. Well, now's a great time to get a free quote from a great company. Head over to www.metalmdi.com/on the move. And our friends at Metal Material Direct have a free online configurator. You can plug in all your details, dimensions, specifications, colors, windows, dormers, all kind of cool stuff. And you can see the building and get a free quote. If you head over there now and tell them that the guys from On the Move sent you, you can get a massive discount on your building. And we're talking American steel. This is top quality stuff, guys, and a great company. They also offer fencing, a really cool fencing solution. It's octagon pipe with bolt together connectors. So don't miss out on this. If you have wanted to build, need a building, or building fence, building an arena, just anything ranch, farm, or commercial related, head on over to www.metalmdi.com/on the move and tell them that the guys from On the Move sent you.
When we talk about rodeo, we talk about, the simplicity of barrel racing is what always intrigued me. And I don't understand why barrel racing isn't the second most popular equestrian sport in the country, because it's fast, you can understand it, and then you add random obstacles for no reason into the middle of it. Why isn't barrel racing the second most popular equestrian sport in the country? I will never understand. But it's simple. And nowadays, people can attach themselves to a name or a brand, a team really easily. Social media stuff, everything else, it makes engagement way easier than it's ever been. And so, nowadays, if you're in the thoroughbred racing stuff, you can follow these animals their entire career with the expectation that it's going to the Kentucky Derby. And maybe this is maybe this horse this year gets the Triple Crown. I think rodeo could start doing that too. I think there's a couple in the horse space that could really get into it. It's hard to do for like dressage, or show jumping or something where, there's all these nuances to it that make it hard to understand for people. It's just not as exciting. But that's, going back to the rodeo thing, I don't know how it showed up on my TikTok feed, but there's a bull. Some woman owns a majority share of a bull, and she TikToked about that bull every single day for 2 straight years. And then that bull, is, one of the PBR highlight bulls. I wish I could remember its name.
I think we talked about it last time. I forget what we looked it up. I know the one you're talking about.
But, it's got, that animal has millions of fans online that are not watching PBR.
Yeah.
And they're not going to events.
Is it Top Dog?
What was it?
Top Dog.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's a good bull name too.
Yeah.
But and I appreciated it from the industry perspective because, she was willing to put this animal on display, behind the scenes and at home, and show that this animal's not miserable. It's not, it's not losing its mind. It's not beating itself up. It's not injured. It's, not any of the things you hear about. But really it was the owner of this bull did that for branding. She wanted to sell t-shirts, but that's, that's real easy to do with something that's, quick, digestible, and fast. And bull riding, especially at the PBR level, most guys don't finish a ride. It really does turn down to who can put together 3 rides. Mm-hmm. And, who's got the time. There's all the scoring and everything else that goes into it, but most people aren't even watching for that. They want to see the wreck.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where racing has the leg up on everybody else, and always will. It's just digestible.
But however, so earlier when you were saying though that the racing industry managed to get a lot of those laws passed where they couldn't have a casino without a racetrack. Like I understand why that would be super beneficial to the racing industry, but like how did they swing that for that long? Like who were they
Well,
convinced
because
to let them get away with that?
gambling was a degenerate action by horrible people, and it invited criminals and sex workers and incited terrible things in society, in 1890, right? And so then he said, well, no. Horse racing is the sport of kings. This is an elevated sport, and we're only going to let this happen amongst the well-to-do. And so it created this false idea that no, gambling with horses is fine. And you can even gamble on other stuff, but as long as you're around horses, that's a classy thing.
Yeah.
But if you just allowed people to just watch two guys beat the hell out of each other and everybody could just throw dollars at it, that's inappropriate. We can't do that. We gotta throw some horses in, class this bad boy up. A couple gin drinks, and everybody needs to be in a tuxedo. Then it's okay.
Yeah,
and that was the thing.
Yeah, it's amazing the horses could carry like that flag of morality for the gambling industry. And I get it. I mean,
it's not gambling; it's just good fun.
Yeah, and then you have those great stories that come out of it. Like think of this. Picture the United States. All the things we've gone through since our inception. Like, what if we didn't have Seabiscuit? Or what if we didn't have the story of Secretariat, right? Like, I bet we'd be a different country.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would be different. But I think even more importantly, there's so many of those things that, especially, and I mean, in Secretariat and Seabiscuit were a little later even, but way earlier than that, our horses was what convinced the British world, at least, that there was something redeeming left in the United States after they'd broken away. We were not contributing to global culture in a lot of people's minds until we started putting faster horses on the ground and somebody had something to bet on. We were shipping horses well before the engine was making it safe and easy to cross the Atlantic. We were still shipping live horses over there because we had something special over here. And that created a space for, Americanism. And even more important than that, we reinvigorated the kind of idea of what horses could contribute and how horses could be utilized. And then we absolutely romanticized being on horseback. That is an American thing. There are lots of cultures that rode horses for thousands of years before the United States existed. But the Wild West is what made it cool.
Yeah.
You look back at all the stuff that Mark Twain would reference, or, you go back to all the kind of Western expansion literature and stuff. That stuff would get put on boats and sent around the world. It'd get translated even sometimes, and people would eat that up. And it was all about, being out on horses. That's where all of our good Westerns are just lies built on lies that got published and sold really well at the time. Most of our cowboy tropes are based on dudes that bear no resemblance to the John Waynes or even Kevin Costners of the world. Right? Because we just kept reiterating what the cowboy model was. But none of that makes any sense if you're doing it on foot. If you're walking into some battle somewhere to lay stakes to your claim, that's not that interesting.
Yeah.
People want to hear about the horseback.
Yeah. Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like, we also, at least for the first time in a long time, we kind of broke the kind of broke down that hierarchy of who could ride a horse and who couldn't, at least in modern culture.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of became like well, obviously like the cowboys, that's overly romanticized, but the real cowboys, most of them were not, they didn't look like John Wayne. Probably if we saw them now, we'd be like, I don't even want to walk past that guy. It probably would smell and look terrible and missing his teeth.
It'd be
and all
hard.
that stuff.
You'd be hard pressed to be that heavy if you were sitting on a horse 18 hours a day, sleeping on the ground and eating whatever the horse left over.
Yeah.
But it'd be hard pressed to find that many white guys out there too.
Yeah.
And
exactly. So what kind of, all right. So you said we were supplying horses back to England. So obviously, I mean, I know horses came through the Southwest. Maybe we'll get a little history lesson here. But I know horses came through the Southwest with the conquistadors and stuff. But I imagine a lot of European horses came over to New England and that area and on along the coast. So what was it that we managed to start breeding here that was valuable to them back there in terms of horse flesh?
Oh, well, I mean, there's a lot of theories about what our benefits were. We had the environment to grow horses better. And, if you grow healthier horses, they throw healthier horses. And so that's just, you create an exponential growth model in that kind of an environment. Somebody from Kentucky, they're gonna lay claim to the bluegrass being the unique thing. You talk to the bourbon guys in Kentucky, and they say it's the water that makes the horses stronger, but it's because they're putting water in their bourbon, not bluegrass. But everybody's got a theory, and who knows? Maybe the very nature of us thinning out the horses that couldn't hack it on the trip from Europe to the colonies was what it took to get down to the base level of what these horses could do or could be. That's well before we even start talking about all the crossbreeding that we did on our American breeds, and then created niche, but some of the best horses in the world, to fit the jobs or environments that we had. You look at your Morgan horses in the Northeast. That was a combination of horses that they got kind of slammed together and created exactly what they needed to do for the jobs they had in that region. They didn't need the same thing in the Southeast. And so that's when you see the walking horses and all these other kind of passenger horses that became so popular and so well refined in the Southeast. And all those came from basically the same pools of genetics that came over from Europe, just in different combinations. And then, we get to quarter horses and paint horses and all this other stuff. But the thoroughbreds are the thoroughbreds. We still are leaning on the same Arabian continental crossbred genetics and the same breed books. And so we started with the same base. I think our environment is what probably made it better. And also their scale. We bred a lot of horses. We put a lot of horses on the ground in the United States before we were the United States. We put a lot of horses on the ground. They were more important than ever before. There's always been a lot of horses, and there's always been a lot of need for horses up to that point. But once you started colonizing the East Coast and then the Midwest, I mean, those horses got put through the ringer. So the ones that were worthwhile, they stuck out and they stuck around. We made more of them. The ones that were only good for pulling a cart in town, they didn't get over that mountain. They didn't make it long enough to get to the Cumberland Gap, much less get through it. And so with natural selection kind of helped with a lot of that stuff. And also we had an investment class. We had a class of people here in the United States that could spend the money on sport. And you didn't necessarily have that in Europe anymore. Aristocracy had that, but the United States was the first time, at least for the colonial powers, where you had farmers with space and getting into tobacco and cotton and hell, corn and everything else, that they had disposable income now because they were selling to the empire, that they could spend on the sport of kings, 5,000 miles away from the closest king. And that wasn't happening in Europe like that. You didn't have just every Tom, Dick, and Harry putting good horses on the ground and seeing which one would go fastest. They were racing the horses that had been working all week. That was, they weren't. It's like when I was in Pennsylvania when I was still selling cows, those Amish kids would race each other all the time. And the horses they were running were dog shit. And beat to hell. Because they've been pulling a cart all week. And Sunday was their day off too. And now they had some 13-year-old kid on his back running them up and down the furrows in some cornfield that had been hand plowed. For grins and giggles, it wasn't, that wasn't for anything more than bragging rights, but, they looked rough. And as opposed to, whatever the thoroughbred breeder 20 miles down the road was putting on the ground and running his horses for. So you still have that same kind of dichotomy here. And you had it back then too, 1700s and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
We were just the right place, right time, I think. And then people started to notice. That was the other thing that we had. That was kind of the first time in global history was we had a consistent flow of information between countries. Certainly that model had existed before. And, you hear about all the pipelines of information that the Silk Road provided and all that kind of stuff. But everybody in the colonies was reporting everything happening here back to England and the general public in England every day. There was going to be an opportunity for a news story. I started listening to a podcast called Pastimes, and it's literally just these two guys that pick a random newspaper in American history.
Hey there, On the Move listener. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to stop and listen to our podcast. Whether you're a faithful listener or a first-time listener that likes what you hear, if you want to support us, there's a couple things you can do. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our videos on YouTube, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can follow us and leave us reviews. Whatever medium you're listening on, if you can engage with the podcast on there by following, leaving positive reviews, and just generally helping spread the word about On the Move, it's a big help to us, and it helps us grow and bring you better episodes every week. Again, thanks for your support, and we'll see you guys.
And then they just read it. And it's the most ridiculous nonsense that they would talk about. But even in the 1700s, they were still getting global news stories. And they were the pettiest, stupidest fucking stories you'd ever hear. But things like, Jimmy has the fastest horse in Sundown Land, South Africa. You're like, okay. And that's the end of the story. Guy's name, guy's address, horse name, fastest horse, random town. And that would be the whole story. But that had to move through 3 different countries. And the only reason it happened was because there was a boat leaving those ports every single day with a load of whatever. And then once it got to London or Brussels or wherever, that story would get spread out. And then somebody would pick up a newspaper from there and put it on today's boat to the US. And so these stories would just get shopped around. And eventually, because it's bred into our lizard brain, the guys in Australia were like, I bet our horse is faster than their horse. And so they start moving horses around and swapping stories. And then all of a sudden we had a horse industry here.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course they had those stupid stories in the newspaper, Cliff. They had to keep the population distracted back then too.
Well, there wasn't anything else going on. Yeah, that's
They
right.
got to get the stuff done up at the big house, without you being too involved, even back then.
So this is something that has kind of occurred to me because it's kind of, I'd say it's kind of a natural thing. And Ben and I have talked about, we've had several international guests on the podcast, and talked to different people and kind of mentioned what horse industries in other countries are like. I know this is probably a hard thing to quantify, but in terms of like the American horse industry, is there any other country that kind of rivals what we have going on? Because I'm just thinking of a first world country with the money, the population, and the space. And I don't really think there's something that rivals that. But then obviously there are places like there's horses all over the world. There's a pile of horses in Europe. There's a bunch of horses in South America. There's horses in South Africa. There's a ton of horses in Australia and New Zealand. And,
Middle East.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, in the Middle East. Yeah. And so like that, for example, like I realize like they're just like an outlier in a lot of things when it comes to like the actual financial impact, right? Because that it's just, when you just are this, like one person is like the sovereign government and you can just kind of wave a magic wand and do whatever you want and you happen to like horses. But like, I guess my question is, how do we compare? And was that ever something when you were with the Horse Council, not that it's a competition, but was that ever something you looked at like, oh, well, this is kind of what it looks like over here, and this is what it looks like over here, and maybe this is a target for us to shoot for, maybe on a specific thing, or just in general, we want to be more like the horse industry here. Like, where does the U.S. compare in all this?
So the thing that was important to kind of keep in your mind whenever you're having that conversation is that we are the most diverse country on the planet. We're the most diversified country on Earth because, we're not technically the newest country on Earth, but we have been able to steal everybody else's good ideas consistently for, almost 300 years. Mm-hmm. And so that's been our competitive advantage, is that we've been able to wait and see what works. And so the things that we have been able to iterate on and the things that we've created kind of as our own, everybody else just was waiting on, or was going to wait and take their cues from us. And so the rodeo industry or sport is a North American thing, right? South America has certainly embraced it and is engaged in it. And arguably many of our best human athletes in the world in that space come from South America. But it's not better than ours. Their industry is not stronger than ours. The reason that us poor English-speaking North Americans know the names of some of the best South American bull riders and horse riders in history is because they all came here to ride here because our industry was stronger. You could say the same for the thoroughbred industry. The best horses, the best jockeys in the world pull up stakes and come to North America to compete. That said, some of the best races in the world take place in other countries. Some of the best breeding operations in the world are in other countries. But as an industry, we're we are the strongest. And I think it's because of the diversity we have. Is, if you're a horse guy, if you're a horse girl, and you want to be in the horse industry, you can come to the United States and you will find a place here. You might come over here thinking that you're going to work on thoroughbreds, but maybe you find out that really your heart is in standardbreds. Maybe you find out that your heart is in Pasafinos. You're not gonna, you could be, maybe, here's a better example. Maybe you came from Spain thinking that you're going to be the king of Andalusians here in North America, and then you discovered that you absolutely love Pasafinos. That wasn't going to happen in Germany. That wasn't going to happen in the UK. That's only going to happen here because this is the only place they cross over. Same thing with your trail horses. You see all these competitive trail folks and the diversity of horses that come in and out of that sport. It always fluctuates between Arabians or some North American breed or, some weird East Asian steppe horse or something. Everybody's always trying to find the perfect horse, the perfect athlete for these long endurance races. But 9 times out of 10, the person finding these animals and thinking about these animals is basing their decisions off of North American breeds. Maybe they're raised somewhere else, maybe they're trained somewhere else, but we have the diversity to kind of create that kind of healthy industry here. We also are in a position, as far as who's doing it bigger, who's doing it better. I think, Joe, your point's right that we've got the money and the scale just because of the footprint that we have to do it consistently better here. Europe has been doing it longer, and arguably they take it more seriously. I don't know if that's to their benefit or not. Breed books, the government regulations involved in breeding and owning horses, the credentialing and things required for horses to compete. There's a lot of things in Europe that were then mirrored in the Middle East and Asia they're not really hurdles to compete, but they're just an extra step. And it takes horses out. The Seabiscuits of the world never get to compete in Germany or Japan because once they're out of the rotation and out of the government system, once they got sold for dog food somewhere, they're never coming back into the system. That said, then you got countries like the United States, Australia is another one, where you see horses come out of nowhere, out of completely left field, and just take over a season. Because we do have people, hobbyists that are just doing this for fun. We got people who are just kind of playing around. And you don't necessarily see that in the more regulated spaces. But I think it's because of the diversity. I don't know. I look at the horses that Americans gravitate towards. When you take away all the TV stuff and you start talking about, and you stop talking about the professional side of the industry, Americans gravitate towards mutts. And you look at what's the largest livestock registry on the planet? The American Quarter Horse Association. And the American Quarter Horse is literally every kind of horse you want in a breed, right? It can do anything. It's not necessarily going to do it perfect, but it can do anything. And then once we had this quarter horse thing worked out, we were like, well, I like different colors on it, so we're just going to create a new, we're going to put some color on it and then send it over here and call it a whole new thing. Or we'll let it do this and that, and we're not going to close the books if it's got a little touch of this other breed involved. And that is I think that exemplifies what our industry is that we take it seriously, we put the work in, but we're not restrictive and we're not closed-minded about it, because, good horse is a good horse. Good sport is a good sport. Look at that's the other thing that we have that a lot of countries don't have, is we're not afraid to break a good idea to try to find a better one. Not all of them have been hits, but, Joe, you could certainly attest to how the polo industry morphed into mounted lacrosse is not something that a stodgy polo-centric culture would be real excited to promote. You're not going to Argentina and convincing all these guys that have spent their generations that, we should just get rid of the polo aspect of this and start using a stick with a net instead.
Mm-hmm.
We came up with that, and it's fun and it works.
I think I just saw a bald eagle fly over here. It's circling back even. Heard you talking. Sure, it's so proud to be an American. It's just here
and
flying around.
We're going to get yelled at, Cliff. I totally see your point that kind of like the people in the United States, our diversity is our strength. But I will say, just so I don't get yelled at down the road, we didn't invent polo cross, the Australians did. So good for them.
Good for them. And
then they brought it over here, and we, adapted it like we did everything else. But
took credit for it.
But that's a good point, right? Like Cliff, you said we steal a lot of good ideas, but really we inherit a lot of good ideas, right? Because of this collaboration that is America. We really, I know we steal some stuff too, I'm sure, but a lot of it we inherit and we welcome it because, frankly, a lot of these folks, that's their family bringing that here, or their ancestors. So you kind of can't be, so once you see something working and you have the freedom to go after it, try new things, next thing you know, the story progresses just like you've been saying with the collaboration and all these people trying things out. And that's why, our country, I know we got a ways to go, but if people thought about it like that more often, we have a lot to be thankful for. And, if you're in the horse industry, you won the lottery just being born here, or if you've come here.
We can do so many things in politics. I agree. You do inspire patriotism better than pretty much anyone I've ever met, Cliff. So you're probably in the right line of work.
We just get to do a lot of things. We get to see a lot of stuff. We get to hear about a lot, and we've got a culture in the United States that rewards, energetic imagination, right? There's somebody will, if you have a good idea, eventually you will get paid for it.
Yeah.
You will get recognized for it, and you will get supported because of it. And, and good ideas, sometimes they get stuck behind some bad ideas, or sometimes they get kind of lost, but eventually they do get picked up. And, the problem is that if you're in a monolithic community, it doesn't get heard. It takes longer to break through because everybody's got the thing they already like. Because we have so many different voices coming in, and it applies to the horse industry too. Because we have so many different uses and so many different environments and so many different there were places for these horses to find their right home. And like I said, you can go through the history, the history of the United States, and there's going to be a special kind of horse in all of those regions. And they were all very distinct and still continue to be distinct from each other hundreds of years later. We talked about walking horses one time I was on. That is a very different horse to, a thoroughbred, even though there's similarities, there's historical backgrounds. But that's very also, we have kind of a subclass of warm blood or dumb blood here on the East Coast that exist, to my mind, only because of fox hunting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not running flat races with a Percheron thoroughbred cross. You're not, but you fox hunt the hell out of it. You know, and that doesn't necessarily justify its existence or that class of horse being popular anywhere else, but they are. You know, there's folks that are doing that same cross and putting those same kind of babies on the ground in California and Utah and Kansas and Virginia. And there's no reason for that except that, you know, everybody's trying to make that same sport work in all those same places, and they got a reason to carry it over. But that said, you go fox hunting in North Carolina or South Carolina, probably more South Carolina, where it's all flat. You see a very different kind of horse fox hunting in South Carolina than you do, you know, in Culpeper County, Virginia. And so it's, you know, it's cool that we have that. And for people that have some imagination and have some willingness to put the work in, somewhere in the United States will reward you for it. And that's, you know, we see so many people from other countries that want to come do their horse projects here. And, you know, it's also kind of nice that we've got more places to go than most other people have, most other countries have. You know, you can go in a year on the same passport. You can go from Florida to Tahoe to California to New York City, and everybody thinks that's normal. You know, that's a normal horse show year, and that you can't replicate that anywhere else. You know, you just can't.
Yeah. There you go. That is like such a healthy perspective to have on the whole deal. Because I wouldn't say, I don't think generally people in the horse industry are pessimists, at least not the successful ones. But it is easy to look at the obstacles, especially because it's kind of non-conventional in that it's quasi-recreational. Like the majority of it is recreational, you know? And so it doesn't behave the same way that like manufacturing cars would behave, right? But that is such a healthy perspective to have on the whole deal. I was actually listening to a podcast the other day, where they were interviewing this guy who had, he had fled with his family during apartheid from South Africa, and he like rode horses in South Africa and was kind of on course to be a dressage trainer in South Africa until the apartheid happened. And then, you know, white guys that train dressage horses got a lot less popular in South Africa. And so he moved to the U.S. With his family and ended up in Kansas, and then ended up becoming like a professional rein cow horse trainer now. And like you just like that whole spiel you just gave makes me think like that this is like the only place that could have happened, you know, where he was basically a refugee and had nowhere to go. And then you end up in Kansas, and I'm not saying there's not dressage in Kansas, there's dressage everywhere, but it really derailed his track. And then he just found another opportunity right down the road and then kept it going. And that can't happen. You know, it maybe could.
It's a harder pivot to make.
Yeah, it doesn't happen consistently. Like if I tell that to someone like an American like you're like, oh yeah, of course that happened. You know, like good for him, not trying to take away from his achievement, but it's like, yeah, of course you can do that here. Why wouldn't you be able to do that here? And honestly, if you're an American, you can kind of take that for granted. That there's just all that like if you're just born with all that opportunity around you, it can kind of you can kind of go blind to it.
Yeah, I mean, you're just because we're exposed to it every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's not a deliberate thing. It's just an abundance thing. You know, opportunity breeds more opportunity.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
but anyway, it's a really, I think there's so many aspects that have to fall immediately into place to put something to get a good horse on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And good horse could be anything, but to get a project off the ground, so many things have to work out. And I think we have more of those kinds of stories here than anywhere else on the planet. And and it's a nature versus nurture versus opportunity versus incentives. You know, there's so many different aspects that come into it, but we get really lucky, and we continue to be really lucky. It is easy, to your point, Joe, to be pessimistic. And God bless it, when I was still taking phone calls from horse people every day, there are some pessimists. But when you can take a step back, take a deep breath, look at what we have on the table, those opportunities to pivot, get out of a bad situation, or just reinvent yourself. It doesn't need to be a bad situation. Just the opportunity to reinvent yourself is so accessible here. I mean, it's not accessible for everybody. There's a lot of people that can't quite get out of that hole, but if you're playing with horses already, you're in a different situation.
Right. And I think it's fair to, I totally understand what you're saying, where it's not 100% accessible to everybody. And to Ben's point, no one's saying we're a perfect country by any means, but it's probably more accessible here, like percentage wise, than it would be anywhere else.
We got a good track record, that's for sure. Yeah. Speaking of track records, though, the reason I wanted to be on today is I want to hear about Vegas.
Oh,
I want to hear about NFR.
Yeah.
I want to hear what you saw, and I want to hear about how many days did you go to the rodeo? Who'd you talk to? Did you go to Cowboy Christmas?
Well, Cliff, I tell you what, first of all, it just sucked mostly that you weren't there with us. So that's
I wanted to go.
So once we sat in our Airbnb and we talked about that for a while, and we told Cliff stories, and we're kind of like, damn, I wish that guy was here. Then we
just sent me that text.
Yeah, put on our clothes and changed out of our bed clothes and headed out onto the town. So just want you to know, it kind of started with that.
Joe sent me a text saying, "Do you want to go?" And you sent me the dates. And I was I looked at my calendar. I was sitting right next to my girlfriend. And went, shit. Oh man, I really want to cancel all of this. He's like, I don't think you're gonna keep that job if you dump all this stuff the first go round.
Yeah. Hey, On the Move listener, have you been following us on social media? Have you been watching the video format of the podcasts? If so, you've probably noticed by now that we have On the Move merch. I'm wearing one of our hats right now. The first order of hats we did flew off the shelves, and we've only got a handful left in each style. But we're doing another order, and if you want to pre-order your On the Move hat today, go to www.onthemovepodcast.com. There you'll find our Shopify store with hats, mugs, stickers, and other merch. Get it just in time for the holiday season and let everyone know that you're on the move.
But man, it's I was sad to go. All right, sad I couldn't go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's something, because I think Ben and I would both like to go back. I don't know if this is something or not, or maybe it's just like, somewhat like an NFR official would never tell you this, but we went the first weekend, and then it seemed like there's a lot of people, there's people coming and going the whole week. Like, is there like a good weekend and a bad week? Like, is the second weekend a bigger deal or like more fun? Or have you ever heard any people's thoughts on that?
I'm of two minds of it. First weekend, everybody that qualified is still competing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that qualified is still healthy, and everybody that all the animals that qualified are still in contention to be ridden. By the time you get to the second weekend, you got washouts, right? Now, but that's that now you're talking about money week. That's you got people that are the stakes are higher. Motivation is stronger. People have proven themselves. So you got all of that. My history with NFR started because of the American Association of Equine Practitioners. They host their annual meeting every fourth or fifth year in Vegas during the first week of NFR. And so as a industry stooge, I had to be present for AAEP's annual meeting. And golly shucks, my first year working for the Horse Council, I had to go spend a week in Vegas. And so I loved it. Everything was new. Everything had just gotten set up. Everybody's still excited to be there. The vendors are still excited to be there. The, Vegas employees and staff and civilians are still like, why are there 10 guys in cowboy hats and boots walking up and down the strip at 3:00 in the morning? It's still like a fun, like exciting thing the first week. You get 10, 13 days into it. I don't know that any of that's really still there. I think the shine is kind of worn off a little bit. But that said, I think a lot of people, from the spectator visitor side of things, I think there are more people for the second week. I think the city is more set up and more established and the routines are in place. And so it might be more accessible the second week, but I don't know. The other thing that is hard to gauge, and there's just so much homework if you're looking into that, is all of the secondary stuff is staggered through NFR month. And so, the events and sales that are going on at other casinos or other places off strip, that might lean more towards that second week. So it might incentivize people for that second week. I went, Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association has their annual meeting every year in Vegas during NFR. And I went twice, and I think I don't remember if that was first week or second week. But that takes place at a casino off the strip, and that casino is also hosting team roping championships for the Team Roping Association.
Yeah, probably
and
the
so,
South Point Casino.
Yeah, South Point.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not a sponsor, don't just throw it out there, Joe. I mean, God bless you. You can keep it a secret.
Yeah, good point.
Make the fans Google it until South Point's willing to write you a check. But at least could have given you free room. Yeah. But no, and so if you're out there, then all of a sudden, that week is the most important week, not whatever's going on at NFR. And honestly, you could say the same thing about, Cowboy Christmas stuff. The convention center has the bullfighting championships go on the second floor of the convention center, which blows my mind. Having these bulls chase down guys in the middle of a convention center on the floor above a whole trade show threw me for such a loop. Same thing with high school rodeo championships are going on, and I don't remember if that's first week or second week. But if that's your focus, then that's the most important time.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, man, it was a spectacle. One of the previous guests we've had on here, Nick Dowers, he is from Nevada, and he was saying, like, yeah, you'll see it, man. Like, the Cowboys take over Vegas. And I was like, oh, okay, that's great. I can't wait. man, I landed on the plane and like got out, and it's a giant like light up billboard, and Stetson Wright, the number one money earning bull rider for the year, is right there, and he's like he's turning and like looking at people coming off the plane into Vegas. And I'm like, oh, this is like a real takeover. This is 100% a takeover.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see. And the well, like Ben said, first we had to kind of mope for you, and then
mourn my loss.
Well, yeah, and we just, because we'd already kind of factored in like collectively as a group how much like bourbon we were going to drink, and since you weren't there, we didn't want to renege on that volume, so we kind of had to pick up the slack there.
That's a burden. It's a real burden you boys took on for me, and I appreciate it.
No problem. But like Cliff, I don't know where I lost you guys there for a minute. Sorry for cutting out. Try not to do that again. Somebody's probably watching like Netflix or something upstairs. But we had tickets for Friday and Saturday night, and unfortunately, because of that shooting, Friday night ended up being the opening night. So in terms of timeline, yeah, I'm with Joe. It does seem like a lot of cool people went the second week, and that looked really exciting. But I would like to go back too, and I would like to go to that opening night, because I loved that. That was great. Just the excitement there and the energy. And you just think about that first competitor, like kicking off the NFR, and you had, just the concert kicking it off. You had just the whole deal. I've been to some live events, and that was one of the greatest live events I've been to. You could just feel it. And it was fun because like Joe and I ride horses, but we brought two guys with us that don't ride horses at all. They're not in the Western industry at all. My brother-in-law and another guy. And it was really cool to watch them within, I don't know how long it took. Joe, you were sitting with Santiago up there, but I know Pablo, like he's a good sport, right? So he's my brother-in-law, and he's known what I do for a living. And he's one of those guys, he will just kill himself to try to make you feel like he's into what you're doing. But you can tell sometimes he's a little lost. He's like, look, I'm from Long Island. I don't know what these guys are doing. Within like 20 minutes, he was on the edge of his seat. He was so excited. So it was really fun to see those guys get into the sport. And I thought that first night, I wouldn't want to miss that. I'm sure it would be cool to see, once some guys have been injured and there's a lot at stake. And I mean, you're looking at warriors at that point. If you've been doing a rodeo, well, normally for 10 days straight. And it would have been really fun to be there on that last day and watched the two rodeos back to back that they fit in. I mean, that probably would have been awesome.
They did that. Yeah. Did you hear about that, Cliff? So had the shooting, so they had to double up performances, like I think on Wednesday in the middle of the week. But and we've talked about this already, but I think this is the coolest story ever. So did you hear about Kai Hamilton, the bull rider who ended up winning?
No.
Okay. So in my opinion, this guy did probably one of the most like Herculean feats in a sporting event that I've ever seen in my entire life. And so the number one bull rider, he pulls out with like a hamstring injury after the second night. And so Kai is the second guy. He's like 24, I think, from Australia, just kind of real tough JB Mooney-esque, like gritty type kid. And so he's going, and he's like leading the pack. Tuesday night, he gets kind of like the slingshot loads on him, and he slams his head straight in to the bull. Or he said it looks like he slams his head. He said he ended up hitting his chest, fractured ribs. But the thing is, he's the only guy of the of the guys who qualified for the NFR doesn't wear a helmet or anything. He's black cowboy hat. And I mean, he gets carted out Tuesday night, gets carted out on a stretcher. Like people thought he was dead, like lifeless. So he spends the Tuesday night in the hospital, gets out of the hospital at like 8 a.m. on Wednesday, going off for like 3 hours of sleep, comes back Wednesday. He has not one, but two performances to do. They didn't think he was going to get cleared. Somehow he does. So I don't know how this guy got like cleared out of whatever, if any, concussion protocol or anything like that. So rides his bull in the afternoon performance. Wednesday night, they have the eliminator pin, and he is the only bull rider to ride his bull 8 seconds in the eliminator pin after leaving out on a stretcher the night before and not checking out of the hospital until that morning, and ends up winning, being the high money earner for the year, winning the world, being the world champion. And it's like, I mean, you couldn't, I know it's like a dumb trope and people say this all the time, but if I wrote that in a script and handed it to you, you'd be like, no one's going to believe this corny ass movie. Like, this isn't going to, like, we're not making this movie,
No.
you know?
Yeah.
And
it wouldn't bother. It's a movie thing.
yeah. Exactly.
Oh, sure. The guy that's in the hospital is just going to go back out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've already talked about it, and I have no desire to get on a bull or be a bull rider in any capacity, but man, I got a lot of respect for that guy. Cause like, if your dream is to be the bull rider, like, dude, doing that right there, that's being the bull rider. That is a Herculean feat, in my opinion. And we had left town by the time that happened, but because we were there, I was kind of following the rest of the NFR, and I don't know what Ben's thoughts were, but like, out of everything, again, probably one of the best live events I've ever been to, if not the top. But seeing him ride and just saying like, yeah, I was there and I got to see Kai Hamilton ride that year. He left on a stretcher and came back the night after and covered on the eliminator pin. Like, that was cool. I feel like it was a moment in sports history that I was kind of a part of.
Well, and that's I think the thing that NFR sells is that, it is the Super Bowl of Western sports, right? And it goes on for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, like the Super Bowl, even people that don't watch American football can get the vibe, right? But imagine spreading that out over 10 days in Vegas. I mean, it's a show, man. It is a show. I always got the biggest kick out of the presentation of flags when they roll everybody in and do that keyhole kind of deal in the middle of the arena every night. Because that's another deal where, I mean, you're just watching a bunch of people that are just bukuing it through a ring, just trying to get this thing done. And you have so many people involved in so much kind of just ridiculous pageantry for no other reason than it looks cool. I mean, we don't need to see that. We could Google it.
Yeah.
But it's NFR. You got to go out, man. You got to do it. It's got to be big. It's in Vegas. It's got to be big. It's got to be flashy.
Yeah.
And so and did you all get to go, and did you meet any riders or any of the human athletes? Did you get to go down and see any of the animal athletes? Did you do any of that?
No, we didn't do anything like that. We got to like see them, I guess, if it makes sense. We would go to like that casino and where they do the buckle presentations afterward, and then you could like see them walking around, because they're not hard to spot. They've all got those like leather jackets they wear and everything like that. But I don't know. I almost look at it as like, I'm not going to like stop people and say like, hey, I saw you tonight. It's like, yeah, everyone in this building saw you tonight. Like, what are we all doing here?
Yeah. They do a bunch of signings at the convention center.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of those guys, and again, I mean, you called it, you said, this 24-year-old guy is, number one in the world, but I mean, they're all kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, and they're living this crazy lifestyle, and they're in Vegas. They got their hotel room paid for 2 weeks. They're there to have a good time. And so when somebody will, a saddle company or a hat maker or somebody be like, look, I'll pay you, $2,000 to sit at my table at my booth and sign headshots. For a lot of these kids, that's the first time anybody's even asked them to like do anything.
Yeah.
This sport doesn't necessarily breed in brand deals or endorsement deals, especially if you're on the team roping or steer wrestling or any of the other non-bull riding sports. Like, this is a big deal, and you could very easily be skating under the radar. And so when somebody's like, look, I'm going to write you a check just to like shake hands for an hour or two, it's a big deal for them. And then when people line up and stand in line to get their signature, dude, these kids are like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And so it's cool. I went one year. I wish I remember which year it was, but I went one year. There was a Chinese delegation that was trying to bring barrel racing to China. And they had hooked up with a school, a barrel racing school in Florida, and a international horse shipper based out of Pennsylvania. And I had relationships with all these people, and because of my cattle stuff, I knew how to show international delegation a good time, and business, keep a business schedule in place, and highlight stuff and showcase stuff. But not everybody knows that, look, you got to take these people to the buffet because they're not going to read off a menu, and they don't want to get put in a position where they have to pick something. They want to see what they're eating, that kind of little peddly stuff. And so so I got a free trip to NFR for a week, or I don't know, 4 days. And I had 7 Chinese guys with me. And, they wanted to see stuff. That was their first time in Vegas. They wanted to do Vegas stuff. It was their first time at a big time rodeo. They wanted to do rodeo stuff. But you cannot bring people from another country to the United States and not take them shopping. Like, it's just rude. And so Cowboy Christmas was the easiest deal I've ever had. The number of hours that I've spent just killing time in a Ross or a TJ Maxx or a Walmart, letting people from another country just shop to their heart's content. If I could have done all of that at Cowboy Christmas, it would have saved me years of stress off my life. And so we took these guys and we just let them run ramshot through that trade show and all those vendors and everything. But that's where all these guys are posted up. I mean, it's guys and girls. All the barrel racers are there. All the bullfighters are set up. Some, they got some trailer dealership that set up a signing booth, or some sneaker company or chap company or something. There's all these different companies that are just trying to find participants to highlight. And so I rolled through, and I've got headshots for like 40 different people, because I wasn't shopping. I got Amazon. I didn't need any of that. But I just went through and I got signatures, man. And it was the first time I'd ever done that, but it was so cool because these guys, they're getting paid regardless. But if somebody came up and started talking to them about the event, started talking to them about what they did on the road that year, just engage with them a little bit, you get to have some really cool conversations with some really cool athletes in a way that I've never gotten to do with a basketball or a hockey player or anything else like that. At the time, it felt just as serious as talking to a LeBron James or somebody else, but way more accessible. But it's cool because, to your point, they're on the street. You also could be sitting next to them on the plane down there, or the bar afterwards at the hotel, or at the sushi restaurant at 2:00 in the morning afterwards. you just bump into folks. And if you're following it and you know what they look like without a helmet on, it's pretty cool. It can be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe, you talked about it on one of the previous podcasts, but that competitor that was trying to get home and their pickup broke down and they're on Facebook looking for a ride or somewhere to keep their horses. And that's so funny, right? You don't see that in a lot of professional sports. Yeah. And to be competing in the NFR, and then you're trying to get home and your truck's broke down and you're on Facebook.
One year I was at the Bronx sale. South Point sells, they got a horse sale where they run all these bucking horses through and they sell them. They send a horse out into the ring. It's cinched up, it's bucking, and then that's how they sell it, is in the ring. And so, there's just guys all in the stands, bidding on horses. And somebody, I don't know if he was drinking, I don't know what, but he got a little happy-go-lucky with his bidder number, and he bought way too many horses. And so he was taping signs. He'd gone to the business center at the hotel and said, looking for empty trailer space, call empty trailer space to, I don't know, Billings, call, and then he put his cell phone number on there, and he was just taping them on the walls all over the hotel, hoping somebody had empty trailers going back north.
That's crazy.
But it was a legit deal. Like, it's just weird, and it's stuff that folks like us, it normalized. It kind of makes it feel more normal, but it's also so elevated and so heightened because you're in a hotel casino. You don't expect to look for somebody begging for a ride up north, at the slot machines in Vegas. You don't look for, you're not expecting to bump into somebody that's hawking belt buckles out of a backpack on the strip in downtown Las Vegas. But all that stuff is normal.
Yeah. Well, and the other cool thing is, like, obviously Vegas claims to be the entertainment capital of the world, but man, I'm sure there's people that do this. You could go there and just have a heck of a time doing everything NFR related and not even have an ounce of knowledge about what's going on with the rodeo, or even like go to the rodeos at all. Mm-hmm. Because what got me especially was like the amount of live music that was there, especially like live free concerts a lot of times.
Free. Yeah. Free.
Like Ben, I don't know about you, but like the Saturday night we went out after
Aaron Watson,
after the performance. Yeah. That was like one of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life. And we just walked into the room and like, there he was doing the concert. And I was like, all right, now we're here. And it like, that was really cool because it was like the quality coupled with that accessibility. Mm-hmm. And it was a very unique vibe. Cause you can go to like a Super Bowl or a college football playoff game, and they might have a concert or something like that, but that'll probably also be a pretty penny to be a part of that concert. And yeah, it's so much a spectacle. And obviously I'm sure someone they wouldn't do it if people aren't making money, but the way they set it up for like the normal consumer,
somebody's got to pay for beer, man. Everybody pays for beer. You might be able to listen to them sing, but everybody's paying for beer.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. But that's the thing is not everybody's in a uniform, but if you walk around and you see some, guy at the bar wearing boots, there's a good chance that he's there for NFR, right? Yeah. And so it makes that big city seem a lot smaller because everybody's part of your clan, everybody's part of your group. You got the same kind of, and that's where you don't get that when you go to Vegas on a Tuesday in March.
Yeah. 100%.
You
100%.
know, and you see a lot of like performative folks. You know, you see a lot of people that are wearing a hat or something and kind of putting on a show and trying to kind of blend in.
Yeah.
But for every one of those, you see two guys that clearly are there with their wives, and this is like their vacation of the year,
Yeah.
and just quiet, calm, not normal Vegas crowd.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
They're
fun.
dyed in the wool, true blue cowboys.
Yep.
Well, and that was one thing. Ben made the comment. We went there with two guys who weren't really associated with the Western industry or anything. I think Pablo made the comment, like, we're in line to go up to opening night of the NFR, and I was like, Pablo, have you ever been to a rodeo or anything? He's like, no, never been. Like, this is my first one, so I'm hoping it'll be good. And I'm like, we're walking into this giant stadium with like electric billboards. And I was like, we're walking into like opening night of the NFR. Like, I was like, buddy, like, you're starting at the mountaintop. Like, you will never watch another rodeo better than what you're going to see tonight.
The Madison County Fair is going to be a hell of a disappointment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, like he's up there on Long Island. I was like, Pablo, don't go down to Cowtown. It's not worth it, man.
Yeah,
don't do it.
But something I thought was really cool, and I do think it speaks a lot to rodeo and the culture that's been built around that, and kind of the Western industry. Santiago, he was the guy we were staying with. He lives just a mile from the Thomas and Mack Center. So he goes to like basketball games, concerts at that venue quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So it's his first time going to the NFR, but he's been into that stadium quite a bit. And he said, man, usually like you leave a basketball game or you leave a concert here, and then you go to the bathroom at the end of the night, and it's nasty in there. It's like a bunch of people run through it, and there's just trash on the floors, and it's gross. The NFR performance is over. We go into the men's room, and that men's room is like just as clean as when we got in there before the performance, Mm-hmm. And he said, like, I know you guys haven't been here before, but I noticed that. And it's just I think that is one of the biggest compliments you could probably pay to like a clan or a group of people that you're bringing in to like have a big event like this. Like that says volumes to kind of what you just said. Like it's a different vibe there. There's just a lot of good people, and it's salt of the earth in a good way. And you feel like anyone around you could just kind of strike up a conversation with, because it to a certain degree, there's like a shared set of values and interests and things like that. And it's just really cool to see, because I think if I was someone putting on the NFR, and you're choosing to come into Las Vegas, right, and put on this event, having someone who's a local and lives a mile down the street from where you're running your event, to have them say like, wow, the people that run your event and the people that come to your event, like, you keep our space clean. I can see you're taking care of this area and this event center, and that means something to me. Like, there's not much a higher compliment you can get than that. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of the biggest takeaways I got from the whole deal. And I don't really consider myself a rodeo person or anything like that, but it did almost give me a sense of pride kind of being a part of the Western industry, right? Because it's like, man, that's a good feeling.
I'll say all of the casinos, bars, get kind of decked out and themed out and everything for it too. It is a very different vibe during NFR in those bars than it is when it's just like 12 different bachelor party groups just trying to get as drunk as possible. I mean, you get a bunch of good old boys in a room, there is a high probability that something might start off. You get a whole bunch of guys from all over the country, drinking and mouthing off. But the thing with the NFR crowd is that it's older, which is also different for Vegas. I've been lots of times not with, the rodeo, and Vegas is there is definitely an elder component to Vegas, but not at the social aspects of it. You're not seeing them at the clubs, you're not seeing them at the concerts, you're not seeing them, they're at the tables mostly, or the restaurants. But here you see a lot of folks our parents' age, this is their vacation. They go and they spend 3 nights going to the rodeo, and they're not trying to raise hell, and they want to walk into a clean restroom. They want to have the servers, they want to be polite to servers, and that it's just a different vibe than the let's get drunk as fast as possible and try to get into something that's story worthy later. The only, like I said, the only part of it that I will highlight is if you happen to be in the places where the competitors are hanging out, it does get a little rowdy. It gets a little rowdy.
Yeah, I didn't say they were completely absolved of everything, but keeping the arena clean is a good start.
Yeah. No, it's
Have you ever, talk about people our parents' age? I feel like that is an environment I could see Bob Williamson absolutely thriving in. Have you ever gotten your dad out to the NFR?
No, I always wanted to, and I always kept saying next year will be the year. There's a couple of things on my bucket list still, and my dad's a pretty good co-pilot on those kinds of trips. But yeah, that I want to go to Calgary Stampede too.
Okay. Well, hey, both of those I know are on my dad's bucket list, so maybe we just need to coordinate on that deal, because I know.
All right, yeah, man, that'll work. If we'd be a big group of guys rolling through a crowd.
Yeah, I would be the run of
You'd
the
be the little one.
Sure, I would be
You'd
very
be the little
small
one
next to you, your dad, and my dad.
Baby Joseph riding with. But I'm glad y'all had a good time, and I, it's one of those deals. Ben, you said you want to go back. It is just as good, if not better, the second and third and fourth time.
Oh, I bet.
Like, it just, as you figure out how to refine your trip and focus your trip, make some connections, those kinds of things, it gets better. It gets better. And y'all went through I guess your last podcast, or maybe the one before, you guys were talking about checking out living quarters and all that kind of stuff. Oh, that's the other thing, man. Seeing how the other side lives and some of that stuff is wild.
Yeah.
And that's the best place to see it. Everybody with money, everybody with means shows up to hang out in Vegas. And so you get to see everybody else's quality of life and standards lined up. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Well, you were talking about walking around Cowboy Christmas with the Chinese delegation. Like, if you could ever just stereotype what is shopping in America like to someone who lives on the other side of the planet, like, take them to, like, do you want to see like 45-foot long horse guns and side-by-sides and more knives than you can count and like more turquoise necklaces and leather clothing and like just like it is just bang you over the head with America. Like,
that's right, man. It's the best. It's the best.
That would be like not even jumping into the deep end. That's like jumping into the center of the Pacific. You
go from cattle working equipment, and then the next booth will be abstract, like cowboy statues. To the next one is chaps, or custom leather goods that they cut and make while you wait. To horse trailers, to
the furniture is
the furniture.
unreal.
Yeah. All the deer, anything you can possibly imagine made out of deer antlers, completely on display. It was it was so wild, and yeah, everything's for sale. They'll sell the carpet underneath their feet, man. It's wild.
Oh, that's awesome. No, it was a great trip, and I'm sure Ben and I will be back. We're already workshopping what we'd want an on the move booth to look like one day.
Yeah, that's, man, doing podcasts. You could record 8 hours a day for 2 weeks and get the entire year's worth of podcast done just on the floor, man.
Yeah.
It would get some nice paneling on the deal where you walk in, people can see you like behind glass. Yeah, classy. I think we could do it real classy like.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool to do a live show from there. Because talk about, like you said, all the little conversations you could have with different people you pick up along the way, and to have that live from Cowboy Christmas, man, that'd be a blast.
That'd be pretty cool. That's, the and again, like the events and stuff. I mean, there's so much random stuff that goes on just in all the little pockets there that it would, you could do some. There's some cool people doing some cool stuff that kind of gets overlooked.
Cliff, I just texted you a photo of Ben and I outside of Cowboy Christmas after we were done shopping one day.
Yeah, they got us.
Nice coats, boys. Nice coats.
Yeah.
I was about to say, did you come home with new hats too?
Ben did. Ben,
yeah, I
so
got
that
one.
Black hat in the picture, he got that for his wedding next week.
Nice.
Yeah.
It is the hats. I never have good luck with boots because my feet are too big. But hats and clothes. Yeah. I am this shirt and these jeans I got at on sale at Cowboy Christmas.
No,
because everybody, all those retail stores bring all the shit they have on shelves that they haven't moved yet. So for all of us weird size guys, if I need 38 jeans, I can buy them online and hope that the brands are right. Or I can just wander around and ask every bored out of their mind little girl running a register at Cowboy Christmas, hey, you got any 38s laying around? And half the time, at least for me, if I was willing to buy 3 or 4 pairs, if I'd clear them out, they'd give them to me for half off. Same thing, I need extra large, tall shirts. The same thing. They're like, well, shit, if you'll take a couple, we'll make it worth your effort. And you don't get to do that at Boot Barn. There's not a lot of negotiating going on when you're at your local Boot Barn outlet.
Yeah.
Always the statesman. Cliff is.
And luckily, like, we hit Cowboy Christmas pretty early on. But yeah, I was struck by that. Like, even when I got my hat, I've never gotten an American hat, but I just thought I'd give one a try, And there at the booth, you had the owners of American Hat Company running the booth. Like the lady, I forget her name, but I think, her and her husband like own the company. She checked me out at the register, and then their daughter was going around, and that to me was really cool. That a lot of those companies, you have the owners and the founders there, showing off their product, and they're so friendly. We ask, like, any questions you ask, they're super happy to show you their stuff. And maybe Cowboy Christmas, you do want to go near the beginning before they're a bunch of zombies by the last week.
Yeah. Well, my boots have never been so clean and so shiny as coming off that trade show floor, because everybody wants you to stop at their miracle leather grease booth and clean your boots up for you. And man, I was like, absolutely. Yep. Just got done. You can do them again. This will be great. get a year's worth of gunk put on the outside of my boots just walking through the trade show.
They smell the weakness on him. I don't know. They don't sponsor us.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like magnetic bracelets help you balance.
Hopper.
Ben got a chance to wrestle with a pig in mud. Yeah.
What'd he do?
Man, I don't know. He no,
No.
but we do. We're in the like trade show next to the bullfighting. And I mean that's the thing about I guess that's what makes Ben and I different. And it's probably good we're different, right? It probably makes us like good business partners that way. But like I kind of like look at a booth and I make like a pretty quick, like, am I interested in this or not? And I'm not saying I'm not opposed to going up and making conversation. I mean, you've met me in person. I can be talkative when I need to be, but when it's like something to the scale of Cowboy Christmas, it's just like, I don't know. Like I went in there and I immediately was like, I don't think I've been in a room with this many people in my entire life. Like this is insane. But Ben, on the other hand, like it's just maybe he's got a warmer aura than I do. Like people feel like they can just come up to Ben and start talking to him. And I don't necessarily want to give that same aura, but when I'm in that situation anyway. But Ben somehow always gets that. People come up and talk to Ben, especially when they got something to sell. But yeah, so the ladies got you balancing on one leg, right? And then I don't remember what you did after that.
Nope, not back.
Lost me. See, this just proves that this is how I felt about this story. Like when I was there, it's like, we don't need to revisit this ever again.
I can sympathize with you in that there's a lot of ground to cover.
Mm-hmm.
There's an awful lot of real estate, and I don't want to get trapped by somebody that I'm not doing any business with.
Mm-hmm.
That said, if there is one thing in that booth that I might need to go home with, I will talk to that person for 3 hours. I will know every single in and out of that person's entire backstory on the off chance that they're like, here, I'm going to cut $5 off this because you're a nice guy. I will kill so much time talking to the woman with crystals for no reason. So wait, explain it why you're here, Ben. What were you doing with the weights?
Oh, yeah, I don't know where I cut out. Guys, I've never had this much Wi-Fi trouble in forever, or maybe since the last podcast. Yeah, so anyway, so you got the whole story with the weights when I twisted? And I twisted
what'd
as
you do?
far
No,
as...
you're standing on one leg, and then she wants you to twist, right?
Yeah, she wanted me to
What do you tell her?
twist. And then they marked the spot. I guess this was showing my limberness. And then I came back, she put a crystal on me, and she said, now twist again. And I know she was expecting me to like twist an extra like 6 inches or something, but I twisted to the same spot. I mean, I had no more, limber in my body than without the crystal. And so that was kind of the end of our relationship right there. But maybe I need to be more persistent, because like when we got our jackets, for instance, I tried what you were just saying. Like I was trying to be nice and friendly and like, oh yeah, I love that one. And they brought me like 5 different jackets, I think. And, they were doing the deal on me like, oh, that looks so great. And this is the only jacket that fits you and we'll never sell it to anyone else. And then both of these guys, they're older guys, and they finally said, hey, look, man, I mean, I'll buy that thing for you myself. Obviously they didn't buy it for me, but man, they got me.
$300 later, where were they?
Yeah, they won that round. But so either I've got to not enter into that, or I need to spend more time with you and learn how to. I need to get the angle on them, but they got me.
Don't get it wrong. I still buy all their worthless garbage. I just feel a little better because they told me they gave me 15% off.
Yeah, that's what they did. I think they gave me something.
I come home
what
with
they said is,
suitcases
the
full of
classic
nonsense.
marketing trill is they said it cost this much, and now it's only this much, and it probably never cost that much.
No, I lost them too.
No,
the jacket thing was funny too, and these guys were. It was 2 older guys selling all these leather jackets, and I guess they're good at their job because Ben and I both ended up buying leather jackets. But I mean, they were really pouring it to Ben, and like so much so, and I could see Ben was kind of like wise to the whole deal a little bit. Like he knew what they were doing, but then at the end, we met the owner, and I guess just through like Ben knew the owner of the company selling the leather jackets. Knew him through like a friend of a friend, not like he'd never met her before, but it was like, oh, you've like ridden horses for my friend so and so and da da da. And you can see these older guys who are like the sales guys, like putting two and two together, and like the guy comes up to Ben, he's like, and this is after we've checked out, like we're done, right? The guy comes up to Ben, he's like, hey, just so you know, like I meant what I said about the jacket. Like, just because he was like, oh, there might be a chance like this guy, like I see this guy again at some point, because he saw us like, you know, kind of chatting it up with his boss, and he was like, just so you know, I wasn't, you know, trying to sell ice to Eskimos.
It's a good looking coat. It's a good looking coat.
Actually a good looking jacket. But it was just so funny that he felt compelled to come up and say that. It was like, hey, like I know, you know, I'm out here making a living, but I'm not like the sleazy salesman you think I all like might be.
Good looking coat.
Yeah. So that did get me when he came up at the very end and he shook Ben's hand and he was like, just I meant what I said about the jacket.
Well, I'm glad it was a good trip. And like I said, I recommend going back. I hope you guys had a good enough time that you will, but
Absolutely.
it's second go around. Once you know where stuff's at, you feel like you're doing a better job using your time wisely.
Yeah. Because it's real easy in Vegas, because there's just so much stuff. You can never do all the NFR things in one go. And so when you don't have direction about what is this, what is that, I don't know. I don't know about you, Ben, but I felt like we could end up on a hamster wheel really quickly if we didn't just bite the bullet and pick a few things to do. And we're like, well, we'll see if we like this. And, you know, if we don't, next time we won't do this when we're in Vegas. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And not staying in a casino is a different experience too. Like when you're in a casino,
we weren't in a casino. So
yeah, when you're in one of the casinos, you feel like you feel almost obligated to go do casino shit. You know, like I don't know what y'all did for dinners or anything, if you guys went out and did something fun while you're down there, but like when I'm in a casino, I want to go to the buffet at least once, you know, and eat a small country's worth of snow crabs. You know, but that takes time, and you know, and it you know, it sucks something out of it too, you know, where you're like, okay, I'm just doing this for the sake of me being in a Vegas casino, not necessarily because it actually adds to the experience.
That's a good point.
And so staying out of the casinos is not a terrible idea.
Yeah, it was pretty ideal. Yeah, the Silverado Steakhouse or something. I mean, it was a good, like, had a big tomahawk steak. Like it was about the perfect, like that Saturday night. Like we did the NFR performance, then went and had dinner, had a really great steak dinner, and then went to the free concert, and then hung out at the casino for a while. And I felt like we nailed it. Like that, everything we did that night, I was like, that was really fun, and that was everything I wanted to get out of the trip.
Yep. And I assume you guys Ubered everywhere, but the one nice thing about South Point is you can actually park. So if you do have your truck with you, there's actually parking at South Point. I don't know if the other ones have any parking anywhere. You got to valet everything everywhere. Yeah. But there's a bunch of blue heelers just chained to truck beds. Oh. Well, that was at the occasionally you'll see some asshole decides to take his stock trailer down the strip, and you know, and you'll just be walking down the strip and see some dude just bumper to bumper traffic moving 2 miles an hour, you know, sitting in his truck, his manual truck, just hating life because he's inching along. Nope, it's a show, man. The whole thing's a show. I'm glad y'all liked it. I'm glad y'all liked it.
Well, we'll keep you informed next time we're thinking about going back.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Live show. That's what I heard. Listeners, on the move listeners, they just confirmed live show at Vegas.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, absolutely. Cool, man. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap this one up. So stay on the line, Cliff, but we're going to stop recording here because, yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you.